Hi, folks. Welcome back to Cordisco's Corner. This is your host, John Cordisco. Oh, boy. Everything's going on today. Every day. Every day is Christmas in politics. We're looking here at the president's real Donald Trump Twitter feed. And today, a lot of, we'll say the stuff from the Russian hoax was released. It was unredacted. Here we have a supposedly MSNBC town hall with undecided voters. But guess what? As usual, the Democrats cheated, and they brought in a whole bunch of people. They were on their social media prior to this. They were all Biden people. One was supposedly Republican. One voted that way. Wah, 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 wah. You know what? How many times are they going to get caught? The problem is, though, nobody notices, except for some really good channels on YouTube and other social media sites here, on Twitter and Fox. And that's about it. Newsmax, maybe. The rest of the mainstream media, all you get is this. What was that, Jim Acosta? It's really ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that even if you hate Donald Trump, I think Americans deep down inside have a sense of fairness. Now, granted, this is politics, so it's always dirty. That's the way people think. And I was involved in local politics, and believe me, I've been dumped on. I was dumped on last year when I ran for city council. Not I'm a Republican, but that's the way it goes. But I don't have the outreach like the president and the parties do. But I mean, how can these people? I mean, they put their names out. You see the guy's name here. I'm not even going to say it. And how do you even begin to justify this hoax? What a hoax. What a hoax. Undecided voters. I mean, it makes you wonder, what's the truth anymore? From anybody. So we get 20% of the truth from MSNBC, CNN, the rest of the lamestream media, as some people call it now. We're probably getting 80, 85, close to 90 for Fox, which is pretty good. I'm not going to put them down. I watch Fox a lot. But who's going to know about this? And these people put their names out. They put their names out, and people are going to see this as a hoax. Why do they do it? I don't get it. And these aren't the protesters in the streets smashing up windows and looting. And these are everyday people. And I wonder what got them to do this. Now, here we go. Law enforcement today. We've never before formally endorsed a candidate. Today that changes. First time ever. Law enforcement today proudly endorses Donald J. Trump for president. Here's what everyone in America needs to know about why we're doing it. If you go on Twitter, you can read the entire America's largest police-owned media company proudly announces President Trump has been an unabashed supporter of law enforcement. He's the law and order president. Now, those of you that are old enough, I'll be 64 next month, remember that Richard Nixon was the law and order president. Now, I'm not comparing Nixon and Watergate to Trump. I'm just talking about the image of the law and order president. And you know what happened there? The polls were fairly close. Nixon just, the second time, just slaughtered him. And that's the way it goes. I mean, think about that for a minute. The first time ever the law enforcement today has ever endorsed a candidate. I ran for city council in upstate New York City, and I used to be a Democrat, not anymore. And I was endorsed by the local police department and their union. And it went against me in this section of town, and I really don't care. I would have done it again. These guys are getting pummeled, the people in law enforcement. And the funny part is all the people around here, not everybody, of course, but a large majority of people around here that hate the police, guess what happens when your boyfriend's beating on you? Or somebody's trying to break in your car or in your house, or somebody's messing with one of your kids. Yeah, who's the first person you call? It's not Ghostbusters. Not Ghostbusters. You call the police. And I used to do city budgets, and they eat up a pretty good part of the budget. But you know what? Got to have law and order. You got to have safe streets. That's number one. Clean and safe. Everything else is up to the people that live in it. And I'm proud of these guys. I know they stuck their neck out to do it, but you know what? Good for them. Good for them. By the way, when I have a moment here, don't forget to watch the debate tonight or see it online after between Vice President Pence and Senator Kamala Harris. Mike's a steady guy. We'll see interesting how he handles himself. I'm sure we'll be with class. Not a big fan of Senator Harris, but that's the way that goes. But good for law enforcement. Good for them. It's about time people stepped up. I noticed an article today that next year, I believe it's the NFL and the NBA, I forget which one, isn't going to put any BLM or anything on the floors anymore or any of that political stuff. Yeah, because they're getting killed. They're getting killed with money. The virus is bad enough. And I have not watched a football game this year. And I love football, even though my Cowboys suck. But that's a different issue for another time. And I'm really proud of this organization and law enforcement in this country. They do an incredible job. I mean, how would you like to walk out of the door every day when you go to work and not know if you're coming home or not? That's tough. That's tough. So good for them. I'm proud of them. I'm hoping that people step up and say, you know what, we've had enough. Yes, we have our problems, but this is not the way to solve them. By locking people up, distributing hundreds of millions of ballots all over the place, it's not the way to do things. This is America. It's not a third world country. We have a constitution. We have laws. We live by the rule of law. That is our number one thing for the United States for years and years and years, for almost forever. The rule of law. And I'm proud of those guys. And I hope that brings the president a lot more votes and a lot more volunteers. Now we're looking at, they're arguing now on the coronavirus aid. Soon Biden is speaking in Pennsylvania. I like that. Text cops. President Trump called on Congress in a series of tweets to pass additional coronavirus relief measures, reversing course from hours earlier when he announced he was calling off negotiations until after the November election. He can still get money. He can send it in an executive order, and he's threatening to do that. The House and Senate should immediately approve $25 billion for airline payroll support, $135 billion for Paycheck Protection Program for small business. Both of these would be fully paid by the unused funds from the CARES Act. Have this money. I will sign now, Trump wrote. And there's his tweet. The guy's not kidding. Guy's not kidding at all. I think they're acting in bad faith, the Democrats in the House. They say, well, yeah, the Republicans in the Senate are just as bad. Blah, blah, blah. But you know what, though? Here's the deal. President Trump was elected because he makes deals. That's what he's done his whole life. He's incredibly good at it, whether you like the guy or not. If I am sent a standalone bill for stimulus checks, $1,200, they will go out to our great people immediately. I am ready to sign right now. Are you listening, Nancy? He tweeted less than 30 minutes later. Trump reiterated his openness to sending a fresh round of $1,200 checks on Wednesday morning, calling House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to move fast. Move fast, I'm waiting to sign. Democrats have largely resisted efforts to pass piecemeal relief legislation. Well, yeah, I bet you they're getting paid. Trump's renewed push for another round of fiscal stimulus just hours after he abruptly pulled the plug on negotiations, jolting Wall Street and sending stocks tumbling. But you know what? They didn't tumble. I watched earlier today. It was over 28,000. That was yesterday they tumbled. I've instructed my representatives to stop negotiating until after the election, when immediately after I win, we will pass a major stimulus bill, Trump tweeted. Good for him. About somebody stood up and said, this is enough. The tweet appeared to end a months-long effort between Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, who spoke for an hour on Monday and briefly on Tuesday to strike a deal. During the Tuesday call, Mnuchin confirmed that Trump had called off negotiations, according to a tweet from Pelosi's deputy chief of staff. Pelosi expressed her disappointment in the president's decision. Yeah, no kidding. Disappointed. Mnuchin and Pelosi spoke again on Wednesday morning, during which the secretary inquired about a bailout. The speaker reminded him that Republicans blocked the bill on Friday and asked him to review the DeFazio bill so they could have an informed conversation. Last week, U.S. Airlines began cutting 35,000 jobs following the expiration of $25 billion bailout fund, which created earlier this year as part of the CARES Act. Although Democrats and Republicans broadly agree that another bill is necessary to aid the economy recovery, they sharply disagree over the size and scope of it. House Democrats passed $2.2 trillion aid package last week, down from the initial $3.4 trillion offer. While the Trump administration countered $1.6 trillion plan, Pelosi rejected that as inadequate. A key sticking point in negotiations is the aid for states and local governments, and this is where the president should stand firm, which Trump and Republicans have characterized as a blue state bailout. Here's the deal. How much trouble were you in financially before the virus? How much did you owe? And how much do you owe now? You do a little subtraction. A fourth grader could do it. Here's the amount that we owed and we were behind before the virus. You don't get to take that money and pay that off. Since the virus, it's cost us X, and you can prove it. That's the money you get. This is not brain surgery. Negotiations first collapsed in early August, prompting Trump to sign 4 executive measures intended to provide relief to families still reeling from the virus-induced crisis, including temporarily extending supplemental jobless aid at $300 a week. But that aid is beginning to expire, and lifelines have propped up the economy in the early weeks of the pandemic. The Paycheck Protection Program, a one-time $1,200 stimulus check and sweetened unemployment benefits, lapsed weeks ago. Democrat leaders have accused Republicans of underestimating the severity of the crisis, while Republicans accuse Democrats of using the legislation as a way of passing their liberal wish list. I think they're both right against each other, but I think the Republicans on this particular issue have much more credibility. Wait till after the election. It just isn't an option. Trump's announcement came just hours after Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell urged lawmakers to provide the pandemic-stricken economy with more fiscal responsibility. Even if policy actions ultimately prove to be greater than needed, they will not go to waste, Powell said. But the recovery has moderated in recent months, he said, and there is a risk the rapid initial gains may transition into a longer-than-expected slog back to full recovery, as some segments struggle. The new report released by the Department of Labor last week showed that the economy added 661,000 jobs. Let me say that again. Just the month of September, 661,000 jobs, and the rate fell to 7.9 during a pandemic. There are roughly still 10.7 million more out-of-work Americans than were in February before the pandemic. We will get them. We will beat them. And that's the news for today. And until next time, good night and good luck.